As purport, Ayan Wayan Ashgaya, the Cherokee Man, James Mooney. Page 281 through 283, The Myths of the Cherokee. Commentary added by Chief Six Fingers of the Allegheny. The eagle, Awahili, is the great sacred bird of the Cherokees. As of nearly all our native tribes, and figures prominently in their ceremonial ritual, especially in all things relating to war. The particular species prized was the golden or war eagle, called by the Cherokees the pretty feathered eagle, on account of its beautiful tail feathers, white tipped with black, which were in such great demand for decorative and ceremonial purposes that among the western tribes a single tail was often rated as equal in value to a horse. Among the Cherokee in the old times, the killing of an eagle was an event which concerned the whole settlement, and could be undertaken only by the professional eagle killer, known as Awahilidihi, 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 regularly chosen for the purpose on the account of his knowledge of the prescribed forms and the prayers to be said afterwards in order to obtain pardon for the necessary sacrilege, and thus ward off vengeance from the tribe. It is told of one man upon the reservation that, having deliberately killed an eagle in defiance of the ordinances, he was constantly hunted by dreams of fierce eagles swooping down upon him, until the nightmare was finally exorcised after a long course of priestly treatment. In 1890, there was but one eagle killer remaining among the East Cherokees. So I'm going to pause right there. So it's a lot I can go into, but just real briefly, there are no eagle killers among the tribes, right? There might be, but generally the feathers that people are getting, right? Who's to say how that feather was taken and retrieved? And if that bird's feather was taken wrongfully and the death of that eagle was wrong, you wearing the eagle feather can face the vengeance of the eagle. So if there's only a few remaining real Awahilidihi existing among tribes, eagle killers, professional eagle killers, you're taking a great risk wearing the eagle feather. Now, continuing on. It does not appear that the eagle was ever captured alive among the Plains tribes. Let me read that again. It does not appear that the eagle was ever captured alive among the Plains tribes. The eagle must be killed only in the winter or late fall, after the crops were gathered and the snakes had retired to their den. See, it's a science to when you killed it. See, they knew that the vengeance of the eagle was so vicious that they did it so that way, even if it did, it wouldn't harm their crops. So we're going to do it during a time to where if it did come back, we already got our crops and you can't get us. Continue on reading. If killed in the summertime, a frost would come destroy the corn, while the songs of the eagle dance, Awahilidihi, when the feathers were brought home, would so anger the snakes that they would become doubly dangerous. Consequently, the eagle songs were never sung until after the snakes had gone to sleep for the winter. When the people of the town had decided upon an eagle dance, Awahilidihi, eagle killer was called in, frequently from a distant settlement. See, that's how rare, pausing real quick, that's how rare the eagle killer was. Not every clan, tribe had one. Sometimes he had to be called in from a distant settlement, right? Because he was a professional at it. Continuing on, frequently from a distant settlement, to procure the feathers for the occasion. He was paid for his services from offerings made later at the dance, and as the few professional guarded their secrets carefully from outsiders, their business was quite profitable one. After some preliminary preparation, the eagle killer set out alone for the mountains, taking with him his gun or bow and arrows. Having reached the mountains, he goes through a vigil of prayer and fasting, possibly lasting 4 days, after which he hunts until he succeeds in killing a deer. So the reason why the Awahilidihi, the eagle killer, had to do this was because he had to do forms of purification in order to even engage in this rigorous spiritual activity, because here he has to kill the deer first, and there's a reason why he has to kill the deer before he kills the eagle. And I'm gonna read on so we can get into this, right? Until he succeeds in killing a deer, then placing the body of the convenient exposed situation upon one of the highest cliffs, he conceals himself nearby and begins to sing in a low undertone the songs to call down the eagles from the sky. So let me pause there. So when he does this, he's being a Awahilidihi, Awahilidihi. He's being a eagle caller, right? And so basically, before you would even kill the eagle, you had to summon it. You had to sing the song. Common hunters know this, that knows the formulas. You can't just run around killing animals, right? There's certain ordinances you had to follow. So here, this is a Awahilidihi. This is an eagle caller, excuse me. The eagle killer has to be an eagle caller and summon the bird. So let me continue on reading so we can get into this. He conceals himself nearby and begins to sing in a low undertone the songs to call down the eagles from the sky. When the eagle alights upon the carcass, which will be almost immediately if the singer understands his business, he shoots it, and then stands over the dead bird. He addresses to it a prayer in which he begs it not to seek vengeance upon his tribe, because it is not a Cherokee, but a Spaniard, Ashkwani, that has done the deed. So clearly, pausing real quick, clearly what was done here was the hunter, the eagle killer, not only asked for the eagle to not bring vengeance upon his tribes, but he was doing some nasty forms of spirituality, a form of voodoo, where he would blame a enemy tribe or settler, such as the Spaniards. So he would basically kill the eagle and say them Spaniards did it, so the vengeance of that eagle will go get his enemy. That's some cold stuff, but that's what the hunters was doing. It was deep like that. So let me continue on. The selection of such a vicarious victim of revenge is evidence at once of the antiquity of the prayer in its present form, and of the enduring impression which the cruelties of the early Spanish adventurers made upon the natives. See? The prayer ended, he leaves the dead eagle where it fell and makes all haste to the settlement, where the people are anxious, expecting his return. On meeting the first warriors, he says simply, "A snowbird has died," and passes on at once to his quarters, his work being now finished. Now, there's some game to why he did that. He said a snowbird has died. See, a hunter knows that when he was even speaking to his fellow tribesmen, he was still he would never tell them that he killed eagle, even though he did, he would say a whole nother bird, right? Just to conceal the name, to continue protecting himself and the tribe from the vengeance of the eagle. So see, that's some game right there. So y'all got to understand how to interpret these things. But, I was gifted to do these things. So let me continue on. The announcement is made in this form in order to ensure against the vengeance of any eagles that might overhear. See, he had to watch out for eagles that could hear. The little snowbird being considered too insignificant a creature to be dreaded. So you see the game right there? So that's why he said a whole nother bird, because other eagles or the eagle could hear that name being called, and you're going to bring the vengeance upon the tribe. Let me continue on reading. Having waited 4 days to allow time for the insect parasites to leave the body, the hunters delegated for the purpose go out to bring in the feathers. On arriving at the place, they stripped the body of the large tail and wing feathers, which they wrapped in a fresh deer skin brought with them, and then returned to the settlement, leaving the body of the dead eagle upon the ground, together with that of the slain deer, the latter being intended as a sacrifice to the eagle's spirits. I'm gonna pause right there. So the reason why he killed that deer, right, before killing the eagle, was after he killed the deer, he tried to appease and pardon the eagle by feeding it, right? So when this eagle is in its spiritual form, in its own astral body, for lack of better words, the hunter would feed it so that way it would distract the eagle from the event that took place on who killed it, and then it would also give pardon by giving a offering to it, so that way it could sustain the eagle and feed it. And see, it's a whole lot of spiritual hunter signs going on. You know what I'm saying? So let me continue on reading. On reaching the settlement, the feathers, still wrapped in deerskin, are hung up in a small round hut built for this special purpose near the edge of the dance ground. Decha Li, and known as the place where the feathers are kept, or feather house. See, so they had a feather house particularly for the eagle feathers, a whole feather house dedicated to it, because that's how powerful this particular bird was, and they had to do it properly. So let me continue reading. Some settlements had two such feather houses, one at each end of the dance ground. The eagle dance was held on the night of the same day on which the feathers were brought in. All the necessary arrangements had been made beforehand. In the meantime, as the feathers were supposed to be hungry after their journey, a dish of venison and corn was set upon the ground below them, and they were invited to eat. The body of a flax bird or scarlet tanager was also hung up with the feathers for the same purpose. The food thus given to the feathers was disposed of after the dance, as described in another place. The eagle being regarded as a great Adawehidihi. Let me pause right there. The eagle, right? And this should teach you that there's many different levels of Adawehis. But this eagle was also considered an Adawehi. And so thus forth, when you kill an Adawehi, the Adawehi knows how to get back. It is a high spiritual soul, right? So we don't just call the eagle or hawks, tawudi, or certain supernatural birds Adawehi for nothing. This is to say that for the most part, majority of the eagles are chiefs that took rebirth in those bodies. So killing that is killing a chief. So let me continue on reading. The eagle being regarded as a great Adawehi, because that's our word for medicine, so-called medicine man, right? spiritual leader. Only the great warriors and those versed in the sacred ordinances would dare to wear the feathers or to carry them in the dance. See? Should any person in the settlement dream of eagles or eagle feathers, he must arrange for an eagle dance with the usual vigil and fasting at the first opportunity. Otherwise, someone in his family will die. So it is said among our tribes that, I'm pausing real quick. It is said among our tribes that, especially one living a tribal life, when one dreams of an eagle, right, or its feathers, a death can come to them or somebody in their family. See, in my other video, when I went into the myth real quick, it addresses that. But in another video, I'm going to read it and break down deeper on this ego spirit and what it can do if you kill it wrongfully. So let me continue reading. Otherwise, someone in his family will die. Should the insect parasites which infest the feathers of the bird in life get upon the man, they will breed a skin disease, which is sure to develop, even though it may be latent for years. It is for this reason that the body of the eagle was allowed to remain 4 days upon the ground before being brought into the settlement. See, let me pause real quick. And the reason why is because upon that event, you got to allow the spirit of the bird to eat and to go about his way. Because had you bring in the feathers early, the body of the eagle is still strongly attached to what it lived its life in, its body, its feathers. So it'll follow him into where he is, the person, where he's headed to, and him. So to avoid this, they would allow a time, a duration, to allow the eagle to remain where it's at and then return later. See what I'm saying? Otherwise, they're going to get a Awahilidihi, a ego death, right? From Awahilidihi, a disease, right? Which many of us know in Cherokee as Anishkina. So, it's so much I can unpack on this. But what we learned here is that among modern Cherokees who brought in the ego culture from up north, you can't just, kill an ego like that, right? It's obvious laws you have to follow. Otherwise, you could bring famine among the tribe, yourself, and death among yourself or people in the clan. Right? You understand what I'm saying? So this is something to think about. Why people are out here wearing all of the ego feathers. Some even going as far as wearing the feather wand of the ego dance. Right? See? So you didn't just kill the ego. You had to fast first. You had to even acquire the meat from the deer. You see what I'm saying? You had to call down the ego through the song. You had to not just kill it, but give a offering and a prayer. And not everybody was, had good karma with their prayer. Some of them was vengeful based on the war that they were currently going in. Right? Then they had to take the feathers back to the settlement, make sure none of the flesh, the rotting flesh, got on them. Then do an eagle dance going for days. See? So, again, this just teaches you how deep wearing feathers are and the dangers, especially when you deal with supernatural birds. See? So, with that being said, get ready for part 3. I'm going to go in more on this ego stuff, man. You know what I'm talking about? Because over here, man, we will toward thee. G-Yolik toward thee. Ushtigan na. I know the path of the hawk. And with that being said, do dadago hai, di dioli, huh? Dungalanish gone.